Okay, so you're ready to get started on making your own Valet tray. It's an exciting time. So I'm going to walk you through step by step everything that you need to do to make this happen. And the first thing we're going to need to do is, because this leather's a little bit stiff, we want to bring the edges up. But if you try, you can see if I try and do that, it's really resisting because it's stiff and it's hard. So what we need to do is get it wet. And normally, the last thing you want to do is get water on your leather. But in this case, that's exactly what we're going to do. And you can do this any number of ways. I'm just going to use a rag and dip it in some water. But you could use a spray bottle and spray it on there. You could use a sponge. Again, if you're going to use a sponge, make sure that it has no chemicals in it at all. And that it doesn't have that scrubby side that's going to scratch. So your typical sponge you'd use for cleaning your bathroom is not going to work. Just a clean, average sponge, or like I'm going to do, the simplest is just grab a rag and get it wet. And what we want to do, the real goal here, is to get these seams wet. But if you only wet one portion of the leather, it will discolor a little bit, a tiny little bit. It's not much, but it is noticeable. So we're going to actually wet all of the leather. And the trick is kind of knowing how wet it needs to be. And the answer is one of those kind of vague answers, but you want to wet it until it stops soaking in. So when you see water pooling up a little bit, then that's enough. Well, we want to get this good and wet. And again, we're just going to apply water to this, however you're doing that. Make sure all the surfaces are wet. But you want to do it until the leather stops absorbing the water. You can see right over here it's starting to get there. I'm applying a fair amount of water on here. And that water is going to soak in there just enough to give it some flexibility so that we can bend those edges. We're getting close, but it's still absorbing water. You can still see it's not pooling up. So we'll just keep going with this until it starts to where it's not absorbing anymore. And most important, like I say, are these seams. That's our purpose here. But just keep going. And if it seems like you're putting too much water on, once again, as long as that leather is soaking up water, then we're just going to keep applying more. This is just about done. You can see it's starting to pool up a little bit in different places. I'm going to give it one more shot along those seams. Just to make sure they're good and wet. And then we're going to let that soak in for just a couple of seconds. Just going to let that soak in. And what's happening now is the water is getting down in the leather, and the fibers of the leather are loosening up. They're expanding a little bit, which makes this easier to bend. Now, what you'll want to do is just along these seams right here, you're just going to carefully fold that up. It's not going to fold up perfectly right away. And so you just want to fold it, make sure that you fold it along those seams. And if it feels a little stiff, go ahead and add some more water. And these won't form perfectly into a box exactly the way you want. That's why we're going to, in the long run, we're going to stitch these edges up to make them suck up and be just perfectly right. But we want to get these folded up in advance. Then oddly enough, what we're going to do is then fold them back down after it dries a little bit. But by folding them up now, by casing the leather with water and folding them up, it kind of forms a memory in the fibers, and they remember this. And so then later they will fold up more easily. So that's about it. And now the next step is going to be to apply the dye. But before we do that, we've got to let this dry out. So we got it all wet, folded it up, and now we've just got to wait and let it dry up. The trick to knowing when it's dry enough is two things. Number one, it'll return to its original color, or pretty close to it. So that's one sign. The other sign is to know that you haven't let it dry out too much, is if you feel it, it'll feel cool. So we're going to let that dry. I would guess this is going to take at least 15-20 minutes, maybe an hour. It just depends so much on your environment and how much humidity is in the air. But I'm going to stop the camera and we will wait. And when this is dry, I'll come back and we'll go to the next step, which is applying dye. Well, okay, we've let this dry. I let this dry actually for quite a bit longer than I expected. This took several hours to dry. I don't know what to tell you other than it's just what it took. But you can see the colors returned to kind of the way it was originally. It's that lighter color. And of course you can't tell it on the video, but if you touch it, it doesn't feel any cooler than, you know, a piece of leather wood that we had never put wet to. So the back's all dry. We never applied water to the back, but it sometimes will soak through, and it's all ready to go. Now with it folded up like this, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to dye. So we're going to just push it back down. It's not going to go down perfectly, but that's all right. We just have it down like that, and we are going to work our best to do that dye. Now on this project, I've chosen the dark brown color that is available to you. It's one of the options, one of the 4 options that's available in the kits. So I decided to use dark brown on this. And when you get it, you'll get this 4-ounce bottle. I think I mentioned this a minute ago, but this is plenty of dye to do this project, more than enough. All right. It's Phoebing's. It is the industry standard. It's the best dye that's out there. You screw the lid off. There's this protective lid. Now I should probably be wearing some gloves, and I should probably move this project out of the way while I open up the bottle in case it splatters or something happens. So you can just throw that away. Let's grab this again. And you don't need to shake this. In fact, it's better if you don't. It's shaking it just causes bubbles, which will cause a little bit of a problem. Not a big deal, but a little bit of a problem in here. What we're going to do now is we're just going to take this wool dauber, going to dip it in the dye, and apply it to the leather. A couple of things to think of here. Don't overload the dauber. It's better to use a little bit and keep going back to the bottle than it is to pour just a ton of this stuff on it one place and then get it thinner somewhere else. Another thing is these crevices, these seams will show, so you'll want to make sure you get down in there. And what I do, we're going to probably end up doing a couple of coats here. And so I'm going to first of all go in just a circular motion. And yes, you will be able to see those swirls in the dye. And if this was the only coat, that would be bad, but we're going to cover that up. But this gets a good set of application on there by doing these circular movements. Now, what you want to be sure not to do is notice that as I'm applying it, it's already drying in some areas. And you might be tempted to go back over those areas and add more dye. That's just a fool's game. because you're going to just keep adding dye and keep adding dye and keep adding dye. That will never end. So don't do that. Just even though it's uneven right now, we're going to take care of that, so don't worry about it. And just once you've covered over an area with dye, don't go back to it. Now I'm starting by dyeing the inside or the front, however you think of it, of this tray. It really doesn't matter what you do, whether you start on the inside or the outside, the front or the back. It's just what I happen to do. So once again, get that dye down in those seams, because even though it's going to press together, they're still going to show a little bit. Just keep going in this circular motion. And again, no matter how tempting it is, don't go try to fill in these lighter areas right here, for instance, that are starting to dry already, because it'll just get dark and then it'll get light, and you'll never have an area that's completely perfect because it's drying at different times and at different rates. So just give it one good coat. Like I say, I should probably be wearing gloves, and you probably should too, because leather dye is meant to dye skin and dye it permanently. And I will tell you this from experience, leather dye comes off only with time. That's it. You can wash up good afterwards. A good alcohol, like a hand sanitizer kind of thing will help. But it's still going to be on your skin. You're going to look like you've been dyeing leather. Now, don't forget to get these inner corners here, these inside cut edges, because they also will show. You don't need to put a lot of dye on them, just enough to cover up the natural color. So you'll see the back is not dyed yet and some little dribbled through there. That's okay. And we're not going to do the back quite yet. Before we go on to that though, we want to get the top edges. So we're just going to use our dye and on the dauber and just cover over that. These edges, we're not putting dye on them really to protect the leather so much, because that's already been done for you. When I shipped this to you, I already treated those edges because there's some a little more complex things to do with that. And so it's not a matter of protection, it's just a matter of making it look good. Okay, so you can see now, if you pay attention, there's some light areas and there's some dark areas. That's going to dry, and it will still look splotchy once it's dried, but it won't be this pronounced. Now, I can touch this, and it's already dry to the touch. It's not dried, but it's dry enough that if I tip it over and put it on its back, or front, or however it is, it's not going to wiggle that dye around. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go ahead and put this like this, and then we'll just go ahead and grab some more dye. And do the back side. Again, we'll just use kind of the circular motion. Now, here's the thing to think about. There are two sides to every piece of leather. There is the side we're looking at is called the flesh side. This is the side that was next to the cow. This was next to its muscles and meat kind of thing. The front is called the grain side. This is the flesh side. The flesh side, the fibers on it are much looser. And you can see even in here, it's absorbing this dye quite a bit faster. And it's going to suck in a lot more. So we're going to end up using more dye on this back, on the flesh side of the leather, than we did on the grain side. The side that was outside. The grain side was the part where the hair was growing, and it was the part, that was on the outside of the cow. Not sure how it got to be called the grain side, but that's what it is. So you will see occasionally as you're looking at the back side here, this flesh side, you will see some little, they look like hairs. They're just little fibers sticking up. And you can just dye right over the top of them, and they should flatten down. But I'm using quite a bit more dye now than I did on the front. In fact, I would guess that I probably used more dye just getting this much done than I did on the all on the front altogether. And that's okay. It does mean, however, the back is going to absolutely need another coat. The front probably will need another coat. In fact, the back, this flesh side, might need 3 coats before we're done. There's no way of predicting. It's going to be different with every single piece of leather, and you just have to do it and see what happens. But I'm guessing this piece, just my guesswork right now, is that this will probably take 2 coats on the back side here, on the flesh side. It also dries out much more slowly. So we're going to leave this sitting upside down like this. Let this dye dry. That's going to take quite a while. And when I say quite a while, plan on, I don't know, say at least an hour. You're just going to let that go. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it now. When you're doing dyeing, I mentioned you should be wearing gloves. The dye isn't going to hurt you. It's just going to stain your hands. And that stain doesn't come off all that easy. But you can get it off with a little Boraxo soap and maybe some, good scrubbing. But also, if you're sensitive to the smell, you can wear a mask, and that might help. This dye does have a bit of a strong smell. And so if you're doing it in an enclosed environment, you'll probably want to crack a window and do that, or else use some kind of fan or something. And if not, be sure to wear a mask, because it can get to you. And unless you really enjoy that kind of feeling of being high from the dye, then you probably don't want that. All right, so we're going to let this sit for a while. I'll keep track of the time, and I'll come back and I'll tell you how long it took to dye, or to dry rather. And that won't be any real indicator of what it will take for you, because your environment, your humidity level, all that kind of stuff is different. So, but it'll at least give you some kind of an idea. All right. So we're going to pause the video here, and next time when I pick it back up, this will be dry. I will not apply another coat to either side so that you can see what it looks like when it has dried. But I can tell you already, if you can see over here, this is absolutely going to need a second coat. Might even need a third coat. We'll just have to wait and see. The front I'm pretty sure we'll need a second coat as well. All right, I'm going to stop the camera, and when we come back, we will have this dried, and we'll move on to the next step of the dyeing. All right, so it has actually been longer than I expected. I got called away to some other things, so I actually let this dry overnight. And as I anticipated, you can see there's I call it blotchiness. I'm not sure exactly what to describe this as, but an awful lot of areas where there's darker and then lighter in other areas. And obviously that's not what we want. If you like that look, then great, there's nothing wrong with it. But that's not what I'm shooting for. So we're going to apply a second coat of dye. And I think I mentioned this before. We might need the third, but we'll see how it goes. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. There. You can see more of what we're doing. And once again, just going to take my bottle of dye, same thing. And I'm going to take my dauber and I'm going to dip it in. Not going to saturate it a lot. I'm not going to try and get a lot of dye on that dauber, but just a little bit. Now, what we're going to do to kind of counteract that, I don't know, the pattern, I guess you could call it, is instead of going circular, this time I'm going to go diagonal. So I'm just going to go diagonally, and you'll see it takes much less dye the second time. It's not absorbing in nearly like it did before. In fact, I might get all this done with one. Now, it doesn't look like it. Might need to go get some more dye. But really, what I'm doing by going diagonally this time, nothing magic here, it's just that I'm trying to disrupt that pattern. And just like before, what you don't want to do is go back and try and color in those areas that are a little bit lighter. And that's just going to, like I say, while you're doing that, some area will get lighter and then some other area, and you'll just spend all day doing that and waste a lot of dye. And more importantly, you won't get what you're looking for in terms of the finish. Let it just sit on there and dry out. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the edges here. I'm going to do kind of a diagonal pattern. And all I'm doing, as I mentioned, by going diagonally, is kind of breaking up the circular pattern so it's not, what you're seeing, the goal is anyway, when we're done here, what you'll be seeing is the color, not any patterns in it. And as I mentioned, if you want to see those patterns, if you like those, and some people do, why then by all means leave it that way. This is all about what you like, not what somebody else likes. All right. I noticed one area down in here. If you can see that very well, didn't get dye down in that seam, so I'm going to violate my principle and go over that again. All right. I'm going to just dye the edges. Sorry for that background noise. And then what I'm going to do is that's almost dry enough now, at least to the touch. It's dry enough for us to come over here and look at the back side, which I know I told you that was going to be at least 2 coats, if not 3. And so we'll just do that real quick. I'm going to do the same back or diagonal pattern on the back. And again, this probably will take 3 coats, this back side, the outside of the Valet tray, if you want to think of it that way. And here I am loading up my dauber with more dye, simply to save myself trips back and forth to the bottle, because this leather, the back side, the flesh side, is going to really soak up the leather. Alright, nothing more exciting than watching someone apply dye to leather, but you get the point. We're just going over this, and when in a minute here, I'm going to turn off the camera, and I'll come back to it when the front side is dry, and we will also look at the back side I'm almost guaranteeing you that we'll need to do a third coat. I have even done 4 coats on the back, but I don't think that's not normal, and that's not going to be the case here. So I'm going to turn off the camera, we'll let this dry, and when I come back, we will take a look at the front and see how it turned out. All right, I've let this dry for several hours, and it is completely dry to the touch on both sides. And you can see it still needs another coat here, and it needs another coat on the back for sure. So this is not very exciting, but you get to watch me apply another coat of dye. And this time, just to disrupt that pattern even more, I'm just going to go horizontally. Or maybe that's vertically, depending upon how you view the tray. But either way, I'm going to go this direction. Check I get this down in those seams. Because those can end up showing, and you don't want some white looking stuff peeking through. Okay. So that's good, and we'll turn this over and put one more coat on the back. And the back, because it's so fibrous, so porous, it always absorbs so much more dye. Okay, almost done here. Okay, good. Always remember to put the cap back on your dye bottle. All right, we're going to let that dry, and then when we come back, assuming that it looks good, and I think it probably will, what we'll do is we'll work on stitching these edges together, and that'll be the last part. So I'll let this dry like this, and I will see you in a few minutes. Okay, so hey, this is dried out. It's looking beautiful. It's a deep brown, rich color. Both the front and the back are colored. This back, maybe it's kind of, it's either way. It maybe could use another coat. I'm going to leave it this way. If you want to, you could give it a third coat. But this front is looking really good. What I'm going to do now is I've just got a piece of cloth. This is an old t-shirt, and I'm just going to give this a rub. And by giving it a rub, what you're doing is you're picking up any of the excess oil that comes from the dye, because we want to get that off. Make sure it doesn't, get off on your keys and your wallet or whatever you put in your tray. Doesn't brush, if you brush up against it with your clothes, you don't want it getting on that. It will, over time, it will dry in completely, but you can see it's picking up just a little bit of stain. And we just want to rub that until it's mostly off. You'll rub all day if you're trying to get absolutely everything off. But just give it a good rub on the front and the back, and just pick up any stuff that's left on there. It not only cleans it, gets rid of any oil, it also just helps it to give a nice luster and a nice rich color to that. That dark brown is a beautiful color. Okay, so just keep doing that until you've gotten it clean. The next thing we're going to do now is we're going to stitch these corners. So I'm just going to once more give this a little shove, just so that it stands up. It's probably flattened out a little bit over time. And I'm just going to give it a shove so that it's formed up a little bit better. And now we're going to stitch these together. Your package your kit came with 4 pieces of thread, obviously one for each corner, and one of those pieces had 2 needles, one attached to each end. Okay, now we're going to use white thread on this one because I don't know, I just think the white looks really good against the brown. But one thing I'll tell you is make sure your hands are clean, because if your hands have oil or anything on them, the white thread is going to pick it up. So just go ahead and give them a little hand sanitizer or whatever. All right, so let's just do some terminology here for a second. Because if you think about this tray, I'm going to refer to this as the inside of the tray, and this as the outside of the tray. All right, rather than top and bottom or anything else. I'm just going to talk about the inside and the outside. And then along each of these corners, I have pre-punched stitching holes. That's where the needle's going to go through. And just for sake of talking about them, I'm going to refer to them as holes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take your thread and your needles, and you're going to run your thread through hole 1 of either, the side or the bottom or whatever. Right? And you will notice that when you wet this originally to form it, and when you put dye on it, it probably will have shrunk these holes a little bit. So it might be a little bit hard to work with. So what you'll want to do is just come from the inside, stick your needle in there, and work it around a little bit to maybe make that hole just a little bit bigger and easier to work. Okay, I'm going to stick one needle through hole 1 on the side here and pull it through a little bit. I'm going to take the other needle and I'm going to stick it through hole 1 on the bottom part. And again, you might need to wiggle that around to make the hole just a little bit bigger. Now what we want to do is we want to pull both sides through in such a way that we end up with the same amount of thread for each needle. We don't want to have one longer than the other. Okay. And it doesn't matter which side you start on or which way you go, but I'm just going to take the needle that came out of this side here, and I'm going to stick it through hole number 2, going from the outside back to the inside. And I'll just pull it through. Don't need to pull it real tight, just pull it through so it'll get through. Then I'll do the same thing on the bottom. I'll take that thread and I'll put it through hole number 2 on the bottom. So we come out And we got the same amount of thread on each. So just to review for a second, because this can be kind of tricky, we went from the inside on hole number 1, we went to the outside. Then while we were on the outside, we came back up 1 hole to hole number 2 and came back through again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the needles, and I'm taking the one from the left side. I'm going to come over to hole number 2 on the bottom, which already has thread coming through it, and I'm going to go back through that same hole. And I'm going to pull it tight. You don't have to pull real hard, just to kind of cinch it up a little bit. And then I'll take the thread from the bottom and cross over to hole number 2 on the side and go through. All right, now I'm just going to repeat that process 5 more times, or 6 more times. I'm going to come up from hole 2. I'm on the outside. I'm going to come up from hole number 2 to hole number 3 and go from the outside to the inside. Do the same thing on the side. From hole 2 to hole number 3. And I'll go in. Okay. Now, notice we're working really hard to make sure we've got the same amount of thread on each so that you don't run out. All right. Now we're going to repeat. You're going to go from either one. I'm going to go from the bottom in this case. I like to switch back and forth, but it doesn't really matter. I'm going to go from the bottom, and I'm going to cross over to hole number 3 on the left side where there's already thread coming out, and I'm going to go through that same hole. When you're doing this, it would be very easy to pierce the other thread, in other words, to cut through that thread. Try to avoid that, and if it does happen, just pull your needle back out and try it again. All right? Once again, I'm going to try and pull this tight. It won't tighten up absolutely, and when it does, you'll notice over time this is going to come apart. That's fine. We're going to fix that eventually, but for right now, we're just trying to keep it kind of cinched up as tight as we can. Okay, coming from the left side, hole number 3 on the bottom. I'm going to go through that from the inside to the outside, and we'll do it again. Go up to hole number 4 from the outside to the inside. And the same thing on the side. From the outside to the inside on hole number 4. And we're done with that step. Now we're ready to repeat it. And I know it's a little monotonous, but this first one can be a little tricky. So I'm just going to take it slow and explain each time I go through it. So now I'm going from the left side to the bottom, and I'm going to cross over and go through the same hole, hole number 4, that it came up in. So pull that through and cinch it up. And you'll notice each time as we get higher in this, when you cinch it up, it's more likely to come together right and to stay there. Well, not perfectly, but over time it'll, each one you do will be a little better. So coming up from the bottom, crossing over to hole number 4 on the left, and go through. And now, just going to go up and deal with hole number 5. Go from the outside to the inside. And if that hole's too small, once again, I find it easier to go from the inside. Just stick the needle through and work it around a little bit. Okay, from the outside, coming in, hole number 5. And do the same thing on the bottom, from the outside coming in. we go. All right. Repeat it one more time. Well, several more times. From the bottom, I'm coming over to hole number 5 where the thread's already coming through. And I will go through hole number 5. And I will cinch it up. From the left side to the bottom, hole number 5, come through. Then we're going to go up the ladder. We'll deal with hole number 6. From the outside to the in, and the same thing on the side. From the outside to the inside. Okay. Do it again. We're going to cross over to hole number 6 from the left side to the bottom and come through and cinch it up. Go from the bottom to the left side, hole number 7. Is that 7? Yeah, we're on 6. Oh, you know what? I came through the wrong hole. Okay, that can happen to you. So if you came through the wrong hole, just carefully. See, I could tell you I did this on purpose so I could show you how to recover from a mistake, but that would be a lie. Okay, just this one coming through the bottom, I went through hole number 7 instead of 6, which I should have done. So I'm just going to pull this down a little bit, the thread down a little bit, so I make sure I don't cut into it. And I'll go backward through hole number 7. Pull it out. And fix my mistake. Okay. I love to make mistakes when I'm showing you how to do something, because so you see that, number 1, I certainly don't get it right every time. And number 2, I can show you how to recover. Okay, now I'm going to go through hole, where are we? Yeah, we're working on hole 6. So I'm going to go through hole 6 here. Okay, there we go. We're back up and right. Now I'm going to go up the ladder one more time. I'm going to go from the outside and go through hole number 7 to the inside. Do the same thing on the side. Hole number 7 from the outside to the inside. And then cross over. So I'm going from the bottom to the left side through hole number 7. Pull it and cinch it up. Cinching it up, by the way, does a couple of things. Number 1, it forces the leather together, but it also makes sure that these strands out here on the outside don't get sloppy and loose and flop around. All right? We want them tight. Don't want them to be able to, something get in there and pull through. All right, so now we'll go from the left side to the bottom through hole number 7, come out. Now we're almost to the top. Well, we are at the top. Go back up the ladder, go through hole number 8, going from the outside to the inside on both the side and the bottom. Okay, now we're going to go cross again. I'm going from the side to the bottom and going through the top hole. Now, here's a perfect example of what I was mentioning. I don't know if you can see this very well. I'll try and move it up to the camera. I stuck my needle through here, and it pierced through that thread. If I were to pull this tight, that would be real hard to recover from. But I've noticed it early, so I can just pull it back out a little bit. Move this thread over to the side so it's not going to get pierced again, and come through cleanly. Okay. And once again, we'll cinch it up. We'll go from the bottom to the side and go through hole number 8, the top hole. And now we're going to do something a little bit different. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go from the outside to the inside, by crossing over. This is on the outside. We're going to cross over from hole number 8 on the bottom to hole number 8 on the side and pull it through. And so we've got a little loop going over there. We'll do the same thing from the side to the bottom, cross over, pull it through. So now we've got 2 threads coming across together as a band to hold that together. I'm actually going to repeat that process one more time. So I'm going to, on the inside, I'm going to go from hole 8 over to hole 8 again. And the same thing from the side to the bottom through hole 8. And as it gets more and more thread in there, it gets a little bit harder to pull it through because it's, it's getting closed. But that's okay. One more time, I'm going to go around the outside, around the corner, go through hole 8, and pull it through. And it can be, like I say, just a little bit tricky to do. All right. One more time. From the left side to the bottom, go from hole 8 to hole 8. Pull it through. Sometimes it gets hard. So when it gets real hard and you're tempted to use pliers, once again, don't. Okay? All right. Final step now. We're going to go through hole 8 again, crossing from the inside on the bottom, going to the inside on the top, on the left side, going through hole number 8, and this is where it's going to get really hard to pull through. One trick I've found, if this gets to be really impossible, is to get like a glove, a plastic glove especially, and put it on, and it grips the needle a little bit. Because sometimes the problem is that you're losing your grip on the needle. Okay, now we're going to do last thing here. We're going to go on the outside. We're going to go from hole 8 back down to hole number 7. And come from the outside back in. Do that on both the bottom and the left side. And there we go. Now, we're done with the stitching for this corner. What I'm going to do is, I realize I just forgot to bring my scissors over, so excuse me one second while I come over to my other workbench and grab my scissors. And what I use for this is just a little pair of embroidery scissors that I stole from my wife. She made me buy her a new pair. But these are just really nice. They're very sharp, by the way. Be careful with them. You'll cut yourself. You can't cut yourself too badly. They're too small, but they can cut. Okay, so I'm just going to take a pair of embroidery scissors or a knife or a razor or whatever, and I'm going to cut these as close as possible to where they came out. Okay, there we go. Now we've got to deal with these cut ends. And you have a couple of options you can do. One, and a lot of people do this, just take a good old Bic lighter and burn them. Okay? I don't like doing that because I've found that the Bic lighter will often leave a little burn mark on the side. So I've got a what I call a thread zapper. and I just use that. Huh, I forgot that too, so bear with me one more time while I go back to my other workbench. This is the thread zapper. If you're going to buy one of these, let me give you a piece of recommendation. There are two kinds. One just uses AAA batteries, or maybe it's AA, I don't remember. I had one of those because they're quite a bit cheaper. And so I bought one of those originally, and I found that every time I burned like 2 or 3 threads, I had to replace the battery. So don't be stupid like I was and buy that one. Buy this one, it's rechargeable, and it lasts way, way longer. So this is just a thread zapper, and what I do is I'm just going to take this, if you can see, I'm going to just kind of burn the ends of those threads. By burning them, you're doing 2 things. First of all, you're kind of tucking them in so that they don't show and so that they don't rub off. And 2, when you burn it, it mushrooms a little bit, which makes it harder or less likely for it to pull through the back. Okay, so now we're left with a couple of needles with little stubs of threads on them, and you can just simply pull that thread out and throw it away. And I will show you how to thread the next piece of thread onto your needle. Just wiggle it so you can get a hold of one end and pull it out. Okay. Now, the hardest part in all of leatherwork is threading a needle. This is the part that if I was a rich man, I would hire someone to do this for me. That'd be their full-time job, just threading needles. So, first of all, I'm going to try and make sure that all the ends, the little fuzzy ends that come on the end of the thread, are together. So I just kind of, between my thumb and finger, just pull them together. I'll grab a needle, and you're just going to stick this thread through that needle, which is always hard, but you get it through eventually. And the more often you do that, the easier it becomes, but it's never easy. I'm going to pull the thread down so that it lays along the needle and goes a little bit beyond the needle. So there's the end of the needle, there's the thread. I'm going to pull it beyond the end, just a little bit. And then I'm going to take the needle and hold it, pull the thread down over it so that so that the needle goes through the middle of the thread, which also can be a little tricky at times. But you just pierce that needle through the thread and pull it down. When it comes to pulling over the head here, you're going to pull down over that. It can be a little bit hard to pull, so just be patient and you'll get it, and pull it down. And as you pull it down, if you pull it tight enough, you'll kind of feel it lock into place. And that's what you're looking for. And then you can pull that thread up a little bit snugger. Okay, I'll do one more for you here. Again, I just kind of make sure the end is not frizzy. Where'd my other needle go? Huh. I think I lost the needle. Where is it? Okay, I found my needle. It was hiding from me. Now I'm just going to thread the second needle. So once again, I'm going to kind of smooth those fragments, those hairy ends of the thread a little bit. And I'm going to stick it through the eye of the needle. I'm going to grab it and pull it through so that it's just a little bit beyond the end of the shaft of the needle. Once again, I will pierce that needle through the middle of the thread. I'll pull it down over the head so it doubles on itself, and then just pull it until it locks in place, and then tighten it up. And now you're ready to go on the next set of holes. I'm going to go ahead and do this off camera so you don't have to waste time watching me do this. I'll do this, and then when I've got it done, I'll come back and we'll take a look at the final product. Okay, here we go, one last time. Let's try it again. Well, all right. I've finished the other 3 edges, stitched those up, and you have too. And now you have your completed project. You got your valet tray, it's all looking good in the color of your choice. And with the stitching done by you and the thread in the color of your choice. I want to remind you of what you've done. When you got this, it was just a flat piece of leather. You cased it by getting it wet, and you formed it so the edges stood up. Then after that dried, you applied a coat of dye, let that dry. You probably had to apply 1 or maybe 2 more. You dyed the back of it. And then after that all got dried, you buffed it up, made it good and clean, and then you stitched the edges. So you've got a valet tray that you've made yourself and something to be very proud of. So congratulations, and I hope it's encouraged you to want to learn more and do more leather work. And if that's true, then I've done what I hoped for. So congratulations on making your very own valet tray. It'll last you not only your lifetime, it'll probably be generational. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy.